to write out a single Bible. Now, even though Johannes Gutenberg is the first to print a book in the Western Hemisphere, he is not who invents printing. That was done over in Asia, where the Koreans had been printing since about 300 AD. What Gutenberg does instead in the mid-1400s is revolutionize the method in which we print, and he is credited with 3 major innovations to the printing process. 1, the use of a smudge-resistant ink, which we'll come back to. 2, the use of a printing press, which we'll also come back to. And 3, his use of movable type. Now, the Koreans invented movable type itself. These are individual letters or characters you can rearrange to suit your printing needs, about 50 years before Gutenberg gets there in 1451. The difference was the Koreans' typeset was made out of bronze or ceramic, so these materials can break after just a few uses. Gutenberg's letters were made out of lead or iron, much more durable materials that can withstand print after print. And it is these 3 innovations, the ink, the press, and the type, that really helped move printing from an artisan to a true manufacturing process. So the man behind all this is, of course, Johannes Gutenberg. He was born in Mainz, Germany, near the end of the 1300s. And in the year 1450, Gutenberg builds his printing press. Now, to continue his printing business, Gutenberg has to borrow money from a man named Johann Fust. But beginning in the year 1452, Gutenberg embarks on Das Werk der Bücher, the work of the book, a printed copy of the Bible. Now, between Gutenberg, his apprentice Peter Schoeffer, and possibly up to 25 other assistants, it takes them just about 3 years to print 180 copies of the Bible. So, big improvement from one scribe taking that time to produce only one Bible. However, in the year 1455, near the tail end of the project, disaster struck. Gutenberg was deeply in debt to Johann Fust, owing him about 2,200 guilder, or around 527,000 US dollars today. Yeah, it's a lot of money now. Can you imagine how much money that was back then? So Fust sues Gutenberg for the cash in the Archbishop's court, wins the case, and takes control of Gutenberg's printing press and the completed copies. Fust then teams up with Gutenberg's apprentice Peter Schoeffer, and these 2 men lock Gutenberg out of his own workshop, and they go on to become the first important printers in Europe. Gutenberg never saw a profit from his groundbreaking invention. However, it is pretty safe to say he did get the last laugh. By the year 1456, the work of the book was completed, a 2-volume printed copy of the Bible, complete with beautiful artwork around many of the pages. First books printed in the Western Hemisphere using movable type, commonly known today as the Gutenberg Bibles. Now, of the 180 copies that Gutenberg printed, around 50 of those still survive to this day. Not all of these are complete. I think less than half are. Some are only just a volume or just a couple pages. We here at the Museum of the Bible have a page of a Gutenberg Bible, and that is up on the 4th floor. You are all more than welcome to go check out. Now, we do not know what Gutenberg's printing press really looks like. No images survive of the Gutenberg printing press, so for all we know, this could be completely wrong. With that being said, however, most scholars do agree it was probably based off a wine or an olive press, like what we have right here, hence the corkscrew top. And this is how you print a page of the Bible. So the first step would have been to arrange the movable type, the individual letters, onto the casket over here. Now, I'm using fixed type down here today. These letters don't move. But at the time of Gutenberg, it would have been the job of the apprentices to take every single individual letter and arrange them upside down, backwards, and in Latin. So this can sometimes take about 14 hours to set a single page. The next step would be to evenly apply ink across the typeset using ink balls like what I have right here. And feel free to give them a squeeze if you like. They are dry. So these are made of leather and are stuffed with wool or hair. By the 1700s, however, printers began applying ink using rollers, which is what I'm going to be using today because it's a lot easier. Now, the ink that Gutenberg used, as I mentioned before, was a smudge-resistant formula of his own invention. But much like we don't know what his printing press looked like, we don't know his exact ink recipe either. However, it's pretty safe to say it was probably a combination of turpentine, linseed oil, botanicals, and possibly carbon scraped from his lanterns, which is how we get the nice black color. So I'm going to roll this across the typeset, evenly applying ink to the letters. Now, this contraption here is called the frisket, and the frisket holds and stabilizes the paper during the printing process. So I'm going to gently lay this on top of the typeset here, slide the casket and the frisket underneath the plaid. And would anybody like to help me with this next step of the process?
Sure.
Yeah, come on up. So my friend, can you go onto that side of the press there for me? So our next step when I say go, my apprentice here is going to move that lever turning the corkscrew, which lowers the platen down onto the frisket, the paper, and the typeset, and we press the ink into the page, hence the name Printing Press. So go ahead and bring that on across, please. It gets a little sticky at the end, so just keep pushing. Awesome. Can you bring this back for me, please? Thank you so much. A round of applause for the apprentice. Yay. Great job. Thank you so much. Thank you. So our next step, we slide the casket back out, and fingers crossed all goes well. We remove the frisket and reveal our printed page. Now, no worries if you can't read what's written here. That's because this is in Latin. Gutenberg was printing about 70 years before the Protestant Reformation. The translation that he printed is known as the Latin Vulgate, which means common tongue. It's also known as St. Jerome's Bible. But please let me know if you have any other questions for me. Thank you so much for joining me today.